Imagine looking out the window of your luxury high-rise apartment, right? Just watching a Category 5 hurricane tear through your city's coastline.
Yeah, but feeling absolutely no fear, like no panic, no urge to evacuate at all.
Exactly. Because in the world we are exploring today, humanity has engineered this flawless system of survival. You just pour yourself another cup of coffee and wait for the Global Superhero Academy to deploy its students and neutralize the threat.
Right. It sounds like a perfect utopia.
It really does. But what happens when you discover that the people saving you from the flood are the exact same people who built the wave?
You realize you aren't living in a utopia at all. I mean, you're living in a meticulously managed terrarium.
Yeah, a terrarium. And the leaked documents we are tearing into today for this deep dive, the decrypted mainframes, the architectural blueprints, these classified operational files of the Genesis protocol, they give us a front row seat to how that terrarium is maintained.
We are looking at an institution that has essentially weaponized the entire concept of safety.
And we are definitely putting on our investigative journalist hats for this one, because on paper, the Global Superhero Academy, or the GSA, is like the ultimate benevolent institution. Let's just establish the baseline of this society for everyone listening.
Good idea. So basically, every child in this near-future world is born with extraordinary superhuman abilities.
Right. And by age 3, they're drafted into the GSA. These kids are trained to be the ultimate first responders. So when an earthquake hits, these superpowered teenagers deploy, and they just handle it flawlessly.
And in exchange, their families are elevated to this elite class. I mean, they receive immense wealth, penthouse apartments, just absolute social security.
It's framed as a perfectly symbiotic social contract. Humanity gets a guarantee of absolute safety, and the heroes, along with their families, get absolute privilege.
Yeah, it's a closed loop of supply and demand. The demand is the crisis, and the supply is the heroism.
But the illusion of that perfect loop is exactly what we're here to shatter today. Because a system that's frictionless, it just doesn't exist without a massive hidden cost.
No, it never does. And our entry point into this massive data leak is a 17-year-old energy manipulator named Sumaira Khan.
Sumaira is a squad leader.
Right.
Highly competent, deeply trusted by her team. But the crucial detail, the thing that really elevates this from a political thriller to a devastating personal tragedy, is her mother.
Right. Her mother is Naila Khan, the immensely powerful director of the GSA itself.
Sumaira is basically the ultimate company woman, raised entirely within the doctrine of the academy. So for the cracks in the system to become visible to her, they have to be glaringly obvious in the raw data.
And that data anomaly is discovered by her teammate. He's a tech specialist identified in the encrypted logs as Kalen, or sometimes Orav.
Yeah, Arav. He's monitoring telemetry during this massive catastrophic flood in Mumbai. Sumaira's team is on the ground, pulling civilians out of the water, operating at peak efficiency.
But Arav is safe in the comms channel, looking at the atmospheric readouts.
Wait, let's really dig into that telemetry for a second, because this is where the how of the conspiracy really starts to take shape. Like, what exactly is Arav seeing that makes him question a natural disaster?
Well, he's looking at barometric pressure drops and localized rainfall density, and the math it doesn't align with natural meteorological behavior.
Just so.
The pressure spikes are aggressively localized. Like, it's not a storm system blowing in from the ocean. The data shows the atmospheric pressure being forced down in a highly specific geometric grid over the city.
A geometric grid, so it's entirely too precise.
Exactly. So Arav bypasses the standard predictive models. He actually hacks into the restricted GSA mainframes to compare this data against historical anomalies.
And he finds a match.
He matches the exact energy waveforms and pressure signatures of the Mumbai flood to a previous, supposedly natural disaster in Brazil from 3 years prior.
Wow.
And the waveforms aren't just similar, they are identical down to the decimal point.
Which is crazy, because in nature, chaotic systems like weather do not replicate themselves with zero deviation.
No, it is statistically impossible.
Right. Which leads Arav to the restricted archives. He breaks through the heavy encryption and uncovers the files designated under the Genesis protocol.
This is where we see the labels climate modulation program and structural failure modeling.
And then the smoking gun.
Yeah.
The actual operational prompt that reads, "Disaster simulation live deployment approved."
Yeah. They aren't predicting the weather models, they are the authors of the catastrophe.
It's just mind-blowing.
The GSA utilizes these orbital platforms and deep Earth resonance generators to literally engineer global disasters. They simulate the destruction of a population center in a lab, calculate the acceptable casualty rates, and then approve it for live deployment in the real world.
This is every major earthquake, tsunami, and Category 5 storm of the last decade.
Originated from GSA-controlled research facilities.
Yes. I want to make sure the sheer scale of this extortion is clear to you listening. This isn't just like a fire department secretly committing arson to justify their budget.
No, it's way bigger.
This is a global superpower, actively burning down entire continents, murdering thousands of people, just to prove to the surviving population that they're desperately needed. But, like, why go to such extreme lengths? What is the institutional endgame for manufacturing a crisis?
Well, we have to look at the economic data of decrypts to understand the motive. It all ties back to a metric called the Global Economic Stability Index.
Okay, break that down for us.
The GSA recognized early on that a world completely free of danger is a world that doesn't need a massive, hyper-funded, militarized superhero academy.
Right. If there's no threat, there's no need for heroes.
Exactly. If the climate stabilizes and fault lines settle, the GSA loses its astronomical funding and its unchecked political authority.
So they essentially tied global GDP to their own hero activity.
Precisely. Engineered disasters create a vacuum. Rebuilding a destroyed city requires capital, materials, and labor. By controlling when and where disasters happen, the GSA dictates market trends.
Resource allocation, political capital.
They aren't just saving the world, they are artificially stimulating the global economy by routinely destroying portions of it. They've built an economic engine that runs on orchestrated trauma.
They made themselves the ultimate necessary evil, but utilized this brilliant PR machine to convince the globe it was a necessary good. And that realization just completely destroys the morale of Sumayya's team.
Oh, absolutely. Arav actually states in one of the recovered audio logs, "We're not heroes, we're infrastructure."
Or infrastructure. Man, that is a profound paradigm shift.
Yeah.
But, if we follow the logic of this conspiracy, engineering disasters to maintain power immediately introduces a massive logistical flaw for the GSA.
The aging problem.
Right. If you are training thousands of superpowered children to fight these disasters,
Yeah.
what happens when those children grow up?
They become adults with the power to level cities.
Exactly. And if even a fraction of those adults discover that they've been manipulated into fighting manufactured wars, the GSA would be overthrown in a day. You can't run a global extortion racket if your foot soldiers have the power of gods and the critical thinking skills of adults.
And that is exactly the problem the GSA faced. And their solution to this is arguably the most insidious element found in the Genesis Protocol files. They constructed a societal myth known universally as the Fade.
Yes, let's unpack the Fade, because this is where the systemic control becomes deeply psychological. In this society, everyone simply accepts as biological fact that at age 18, a hero's powers will naturally begin to deteriorate.
They supposedly just fade out, allowing these teenagers to retire into comfortable, wealthy civilian lives.
Right. Sumayya's own father believes this wholeheartedly. The transcripts show Sumayya asking him about the day his powers left him, and he just shrugs it off. He says, "It just happens. Biology catches up."
It's treated like puberty in reverse.
Yeah, exactly.
But the medical blueprints Araf pulls from the deepest layers of the server reveal the horrifying biomechanics of the Fade. It has absolutely nothing to do with biology or natural maturation.
Manufactured.
The Fade is a forced, meticulously timed medical suppression.
So how are they actually executing this on a global scale without anyone catching on? Like, how do you hide that?
Through the Academy's mandatory health regimens. The documents outline a specific chemical compound that is introduced into the student systems starting at age 5.
Oh, wow. Age 5.
Yeah. It's administered under the guise of routine vaccinations and nutritional supplements required for their intense physical training. Over the years, these booster shots slowly accumulate in the nervous system.
And then what happens at 18?
By the time the student approaches their 18th birthday, the compound reaches a critical mass and binds to the specific neural pathways responsible for their superhuman abilities, effectively calcifying them.
So it's chemical castration of their superpowers.
That's exactly what it is. And the brilliance of this system, the dark, terrifying brilliance of it, is how they secure compliance. The GSA strips these young adults of their abilities to ensure no one can ever challenge the ruling council.
But to keep the victims docile, they flood them with privilege.
Exactly.
It's the gilded cage. The parents trade their physical power and the physical power of their children for immense generational wealth. It's institutionalized bribery.
It really is. The parents convince themselves that the fate is a natural tragedy because the alternative.
Accepting the truth.
Right, accepting the truth means admitting they sold their children's nervous systems and their children's safety for a penthouse apartment and social elite status.
It creates a self-policing society.
Mm.
The adults, who are now completely powerless, are entirely dependent on the GSA for their lifestyle. They become complicit in a system they don't even fully understand.
Leaving their own children to bleed for the very machine that crippled them.
But the Genesis Protocol isn't just a clinical overview of a corrupt government. This massive, faceless, systemic issue crashes directly into our main subject's personal life.
Sumaira.
Because Sumaya doesn't just find out her entire life is a lie. She discovers that the project oversight for the power suppression protocols, the architect who signed off on the chemical compound that neutralizes these kids, is Director Naila Khan,
Her own mother.
her mother.
The psychological weight of that revelation cannot be overstated. Sumaira discovers that the woman who raised her a woman viewed globally as a savior who helped rebuild society from the ashes of old conflicts, built that new society entirely on institutionalized deceit and child exploitation.
Which rapidly accelerates the timeline. Sumaya and her team don't have time to, process the trauma. They have to stop the Mumbai flood and shut down the Genesis Protocol before the GSA realizes there's been a data breach.
Which pushes us to the climactic confrontation in the core control chamber.
The encrypted surveillance logs of this space paint an incredible picture. The core control chamber is described as this vast, cathedral-like room made entirely of glass and hard light projections.
At the center is a massive floating control sphere that monitors and manipulates the orbital platforms, projecting global disasters in real-time telemetry.
So Sumara's team breaches the room. Their intention is to hijack the broadcast signal and release the decrypted files to the global network.
But waiting for them in the center of the room isn't a team of security guards. It's Naila Khan.
And we have to look at Naila not just as a bureaucrat sitting behind a desk signing execution orders, but as a severe active threat. Because the ultimate hypocrisy of the GSA's ruling class is revealed right here.
Right. Naila, as the director, exempted herself from the biological controls she mandated for the populace.
She never underwent the fade.
She is fully powered, and her ability is shape-shifting. She is a master combatant with decades of experience, and she uses her abilities to wage asymmetric psychological warfare against her own daughter's team.
The combat logs are just harrowing to read. Naila doesn't just engage them with brute force. When Sumara's heavy hitters push forward, Naila rapidly morphs into an innocent, terrified civilian.
She drops to her knees, screaming for help, forcing the teenagers' ingrained rescue conditioning to kick in. They just freeze.
And the second they hesitate, she incapacitated them. She shifts into the forms of Sumara's own teammates to create absolute chaos in the ranks.
She weaponizes their empathy. It's a ruthless tactic that highlights the fundamental difference between the GSA's leadership and the students they exploit.
The students are conditioned to save lives. Naila is conditioned to maintain the system at any cost.
And she saves the most devastating psychological manipulation for Sumaira herself.
Oh man, this part is brutal.
At the peak of the confrontation, when Sumaira has a clear shot to end it, Naila shifts her form into a childhood version of Sumaira.
She uses a 7-year-old's voice.
Yes, looking up at her older self, crying, "Why are you hurting me?" It is designed to completely break Sumaira's resolve by reflecting her own lost innocence back at her.
And throughout this entire encounter, Naila's own psychological state remains terrifyingly calm. She isn't like some cartoon villain reveling in the chaos.
No, not at all. When she strikes a hesitating teammate, she clinically notes, compassion is predictable.
And when she anticipates Sumara's attacks, she criticizes her daughter's tactics, stating she still thinks in straight lines.
Naila views everything as a cold, calculated equation. In her mind, she is the hero.
Exactly. The concept of institutional inertia is fully embodied in Naila. She genuinely believes she is making the hard choices that no one else has the stomach to make.
She is sacrificing thousands in orchestrated disasters to prevent the uncontrolled extinction of billions.
Let's actually pause and look at Naila's worldview. Because to really understand the Genesis Protocol, we have to engage with the philosophical war at the center of it. Let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah, let's do it.
Naila lived through the collapse of the old world. She saw what happened when humanity had complete freedom and unchecked superhuman abilities. It almost resulted in a global extinction event.
Right. She tells Sumaira during the fight, truth doesn't stabilize economies. Truth doesn't keep the lights on.
And if we look at our own history, human nature, left to his own devices, often trends toward conflict, resource depletion, and self-destruction. If you have the power to enforce a script that guarantees the survival of the species, even if it requires manufacturing a common enemy to unite them against.
Is Nyla entirely wrong to prioritize order over transparency?
Yeah, is she?
Well, it's the classic debate between liberty and security, but taken to an absolute uncompromising extreme. Nyla operates on the core premise that the general public cannot handle reality.
She believes that free will is a luxury a superpowered society cannot afford.
If people know they are safe, they will eventually turn their power against each other. So she gives them a script. She provides a manufactured crisis to keep them united and focused.
But the rebuttal to that, the reason Sumara fundamentally rejects her mother's equation is crucial. When Nyla defends her actions by stating that truth doesn't stabilize economies, Sumara fires back with the defining line of the entire leak.
She says, neither does fear.
Neither does fear. Sumara recognizes the flaw in Nyla's logic. A society maintained by extortion, biological suppression, and the constant looming threat of engineered annihilation isn't a society at peace.
It's a hostage situation. Nyla hasn't saved humanity. She has simply trapped it in a perpetual state of managed trauma.
And that realization dictates the outcome of the battle. Sumara refuses to play by Nyla's rules of acceptable casualties. She doesn't kill her mother.
Instead, she utilizes her energy manipulation to create a non-destructive containment field. She locks Nyla in her true form, neutralizing her ability to shapeshift, and holds her there while Arav initiates the system override at the central console.
The Truth Broadcast. Arav bypasses the internal network and taps directly into every public screen, personal device, and broadcast channel worldwide. The decrypted files just flood the globe.
The data dump is absolute. The disaster simulation models, the casualty projections signed by the GSA Council, the medical blueprints detailing the chemical suppression of the Fade.
And Nyla's own operational authorizations. The curtain is pulled back completely.
And what the source documents describe next is perhaps the most striking, haunting moment in the entire narrative. As the broadcast goes live and the internal systems are locked out, the Genesis protocol algorithms automatically shut down.
The orbital platforms power down.
The deep Earth resonance generators cease functioning. The storms they were brewing over Mumbai instantly begin to dissipate. The tectonic plates stabilize.
The aftermath is described with this terrifying beauty. The red crisis lights in the sky go dark. The emergency alarms in the streets cut off. There are no sirens wailing in the distance. The world is plunged into an eerie, absolute silence.
Because, for the very first time in these teenagers' entire lives, there is no manufactured crisis demanding their blood.
Nothing is forcing them to fight. It's just quiet.
But that quiet is heavy, because if we synthesize the final thematic takeaway from these leaked files, it is the realization that choice is the greatest power, but it is also the most terrifying.
The world Sumara and her team step out into is no longer a pristine utopia. The public is reeling from the broadcast. Trust in global institutions has been instantly, irrevocably shattered.
The economy, which was artificially propped up by disaster relief, is likely going to freefall. The future is incredibly uncertain and potentially chaotic.
But it is undeniably real. The final logs describe Sumara and her team standing on an overlook above the city, staring at a skyline that is finally free of the GSA's crisis projections.
They realize that true safety can never be forced. Saving the world shouldn't mean controlling it. It means giving people the autonomy to face reality, however messy it might be, and the chance to save themselves.
The GSA eradicated the chaos of nature, but in doing so, they eradicated human agency. They built a perfect machine, but they forgot that humanity isn't meant to be a cog in an equation.
It's a heavy, brilliant leak, and it's exactly why we wanted to guide you through this source material today.
Because analyzing the Genesis protocol isn't just about reading a thriller about superpowered teens dismantling a corrupt academy. It's a profound lens through which to view our own society.
It forces you to examine the trust you place in the institutions that govern your life. It asks you to question the data you aren't allowed to see and to calculate the true price you are willing to pay for the feeling of being protected.
It demands that we ask ourselves what essential parts of our humanity we are actively sacrificing when we allow unseen authorities to write the script of our existence.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now?
We want to leave you with a lingering thought. Let's circle all the way back to that perfect utopian world we visualized at the very beginning of this deep dive. Imagine it isn't just a story in a decrypted file. If you were offered a reality completely free of unpredictable natural disasters, a world completely free of poverty and the chaos of war, but the absolute cost was surrendering your free will, your natural potential, and the objective truth to an unseen absolute authority. Would you take the deal?